Hi, welcome to LokiHasCards. I'm Loki, and I has cards. While I have a fair number of plans for this channel, I thought an introduction was in order. First, as you can see, I enjoy TCGs, or trading card games, and cards in general. Mostly Pokemon, as I found it's the most enjoyable for me to play. Other TCGs I'll collect for the art that's involved in it, or for potential value down the line, as a collector would. Recently, though, I've gotten kind of into like sport cards. I'm not a huge sports guy. In fact, I would be hard pressed to tell you anything about sports, but they have some nice designs, especially some of their parallels, as I'm learning they're calling them. Different varieties of cards and different holographic effects, if you will. And so now a fair amount of my binder is comprised of sports cards. Well, now that we've established that, the fact that I love cards, and I don't think my tale is necessarily unique. I think it's pretty similar to a lot of others. Obviously, it started with Pokemon. I started collecting probably in the mid to late 1990s, and I've been pretty sporadic in my collecting, but I always come back to it. So, in one of my most recent on again and off again moments when it comes to messing with Pokemon cards, this was about 2016 to 2023. When this period started, I was kind of learning how to play Pokemon the right way. I'm sure it would not be a surprise to anybody if I were to tell you that me and my friends, when we were kids, did not play the game right at all. We played it entirely wrong, in fact. But during this time, I started to learn how to build a deck, and it started with theme decks. Not this one, mind you, but pre-made decks that they run all right. They're not the most complicated or sophisticated things in the world, but they do a decent enough job and they do help you learn the game. Then, as I got a little bit more sophisticated in playing the game, I learned how to make my own decks, because that is a skill that you have to learn. You're not gonna pick up the game and immediately know how to put a deck together. And so that's something you kind of have to mess with and try and fail. In fact, I even went to a couple of tournaments. Now, I haven't won any tournament. In fact, I got soundly beaten in both of them. The first one was an absolute nightmare. I had no idea what I was doing, come to find out. Because theme decks do not operate the same way as tournament decks. And then in my next tournament, I've only gone to 2 so far. Again, this is kind of during that same period, but your work and obligations kind of get in the way of your hobbies sometimes. During the second tournament, I wouldn't say I did great. I won, I think it was 2 matches, and I got beaten in my third match. But I did a lot better. My first tournament, I didn't win at all. And in my second tournament, I beat 2 people until I got stopped by the third. And even then, that was a really good learning experience. I learned a lot about strategy and follow through in that when it comes to how you play a trading card game. And during this time, when I was trying to figure things out and build my decks, I was able to walk into, again, mind you, this was about 2016, so things were different. This was pre-pandemic and all that. I was able to walk into a Walmart or a GameStop and go to their clearance section, and I was able to wipe out their clearance section. In fact, that's where I got this guy, was all the way back then. I would go to the clearance section and they were heavily reduced, so and I found out that Evolutions at the time that I was starting to do tournament play it was either already phased out of tournament play or it was getting phased out, something like that. And so for cards or for packs that are no longer tournament viable, I just stopped opening them because for me, the point wasn't to open the cards and, find the most cool card. It was to open the cards to find things that worked for the deck I was trying to run, or to look at what the release list was to find out what kind of deck I could build, and order appropriately. And that was a lot of fun. But all good things have to come to an end. And so you see this little Scarlet and Violet booster pack here. I got this actually from a booster box. I got two booster boxes, and I opened one and I left the other one sealed. I just recently opened it, and plummeted its market value, but whatever. So I around this time is when I started kind of falling out of Pokemon. And it was due in large part to how things seemed to be going. Gone were the days that I could walk into somewhere and there was going to be a clearance section. That just didn't happen. And it still doesn't. And then I would go in and there was, not only was there no clearance section, but there was no current products on the shelf. In fact, I had just recently gotten to experience this because I've started wanting to get back into the hobby with the release of Phantasmal Flames, it was hard to get my hands on a booster pack. I go there and it's fairly early. I mean, the Walmart had been open for a while. But there's already a line of people there. It looked like they'd been like camping out. And I guess some of them knew each other because they kind of looked at me like I was like a clueless halfwit. And I guess in a sense they were right because I definitely did not get anything from that store. In fact, it wasn't until much later in the day that I happened to run across it was another Walmart in a different area. And I guess they've recently, a lot of stores have started implementing quantity limits, which is great because I even managed to pick up some cards today because the scalpers weren't able to grab them all. And so it's just that frustration with having this hobby and not being able to enjoy it that kind of drove me out of it in the first place. But I don't want to be kept out of it. I don't want to not enjoy this thing that I have so much passion for. So really, I don't think I'm ever going to stop collecting cards. It's a fun thing for me and my family. Me and my kids will open packs together. We'll even, bust out some of the theme decks, or, God forbid, Dad busts out one of his, home built decks, and we just have fun. And it's something where, you know, and I like the online Pokemon, I do, but there's just that thing where I get to sit there with my kid, and they're sitting across from me, and I get to watch them think and strategize and learn, and you know make judgment calls on, should I sacrifice this Pokemon, or like, who do I put energy on? And there's all these little things running through their head, and I get to see them put it all together, and it's amazing. And it's just one of those things that I hope I get to continue to enjoy that with them, and it makes me look very forward to eventually when I have grandbabies and I can open packs and play games with them, and then just get to look at the artwork sometimes. Sometimes the artwork is really cool. I mean, you look at how these things used to be, like, and not that this artwork is bad, right? I wouldn't say this artwork is bad by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that we would be kidding ourselves if we said that it has not changed drastically when you look at how these modern cards are made. I mean, just look at this, the full art that is involved in some of these cards. It's very impressive. And then how the holofoil has changed, and you have, like, even the trainer cards get decked out. It's a really neat thing to get to see. and to get to look at it and, ask your kids as you're opening packs, and you get a really neat, like, or a few neat looking ones, and you go, oh, like, well, which one do you like? Why do you like it? And you get to engage in that conversation with them, and it's just a lot of fun. So that's really what I want this channel to be about, is, learning the game, enjoying the cards, and, like I said, for people who are just starting out, building a deck is tough. And you may not understand why a theme deck or a league deck is built in a certain way. And so I want to look at those pre-made decks, the old ones, the old theme decks, and get some of the modern, mega battle decks, or V battle, or whatever the current iteration is, and kind of examine those and talk about why, why is this like the front runner card, or why should it be? Why are these trainer cards put in there? Why did they make the choice with the energy distribution, or like the amount of energy they put in the deck? How is it that that is what it needs to run optimally? So I don't really want to get ahead of myself, but I mean, that is kind of like what I have planned for the next video, is going over this. And we'll get to look at it, and we'll get to see, why they made this deck the way they did, which, by the way, it looks pretty cool. I'm excited to do that. And then even compare and contrast, how has it changed from these old theme decks? It's just one of those things. I've seen people who, they want to be more involved. They want to get past just the collecting and understanding the game. And yeah, you can explain to somebody, okay, you can't do this during the first turn. You can only attach one energy each turn. But until you actually break down the deck and why the distributions are the way they are, and kind of what the plan of attack is, it all stays pretty hard to follow. So that I want to kind of demystify how you play the game. Now, I do plan on, like, as I cover stuff, selling some of it. Either once we're done with it, selling it used, or selling, if I'm able to snag a couple of copies of something, and then selling the extra copy that I managed to snag. I'm just going to be upfront about it. Yep, there's going to be a markup from the MSRP. And for some items, if I think it's a particularly good item, there's going to be a steep one. And here's the great thing is, if you don't either want to buy it or you can't buy it, you don't have to, right? I'm more than happy for you to just watch the videos and hang out with me. That's great. I love it. For those of you who are able, if you are enjoying the channel as it continues to grow and develop, I would encourage you to, go to any of the stores that I've set up. I've already set up some stuff on Whatnot and on eBay, and grab a couple things here and there, because as any of you know, this is kind of an expensive hobby, and in order to have stuff to continue to cover, well, I'll need a little bit of help with that. Like I said, if you're not in the position to, or if you're just against doing it, I get it. Don't worry about it. And so really, that's it. I'm going to start where I'm at. I have a pretty decent collection of theme decks already. And I'll be going over things and talking to y'all about how it works, talking about the art, and why I think maybe a certain strategy would work well with one deck or not. And I may be wrong. And I would encourage you to, let me know in the comments what you think the right way of doing, like, of running that deck is, or how maybe you would adjust it to make it more optimal. Those kinds of insights, I think if we discuss them, they can really help better us as players overall. If at some point you find yourself enjoying the content, the usual YouTube stuff, please subscribe to the channel, like the videos, share them with your friends. I'm currently working on getting social media up and running, but I have no promises as to when exactly that's going to happen. And like I said, best way to support the channel, if you are able to, is going to be through those Whatnot and eBay stores, which I'll have linked somewhere, somehow. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I'll figure it out. And that's it. All right. You have a good one, and God bless you.